This is my house.
Argylle. It makes very little sense. It's from the director Matthew Vaughn, who's made films that I quite liked in the past, but there are a couple of different Matthew Vaughns, it appears. There's the Matthew Vaughn who directed Layer Cake and Kingsman: The Secret Service, and I quite like both of them. Sadly, Argylle is not from that Matthew Vaughn. Argylle is from the Matthew Vaughn that directed Kingsman 2: The Golden Circle, and if you've never seen it, in the crescendo of the film, a very aged CGI Elton John kung fu's a load of bad guys while dressed as a chicken in platform heels. It jumps the shark in ridiculous ways. So what is Argylle? It's an action spy movie starring Bryce Dallas Howard. Don't pay attention to the press around the film and the promo shots that may lead you to think it's a film starring Henry Cavill and Dua Lipa. Look at this picture. How out front they have Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa and Samuel L. Jackson, and these three are barely in the film. It's mostly Bryce Dallas Howard and Sam Rockwell. The press releases were intentionally misleading, as was the trailer. Henry Cavill is used once again in another bait and switch, and if you don't know the term jumping the shark, it comes from a US TV show called Happy Days. In one particular episode, the character The Fonz, who was supposed to be a stereotypical cool guy of the day, water skied off a ramp and over a shark enclosure while wearing his signature leather jacket. It basically describes when a show gets so far-fetched that it breaks all suspension of disbelief. The person driving the motorboat in Happy Days was the character Richie Cunningham, who was played by Ron Howard, Bryce Dallas Howard's dad. The symmetry is quite beautiful, because over half of the runtime of Argylle, I would say, is spent jumping the shark. Jumping the shark is when TV shows start to include outrageous or implausible scenarios in an effort to boost viewership and wow factor. This is usually indicative of a decline in overall quality. This happened in Argylle about an hour in for me. During a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, and the remainder of it was Bryce Dallas Howard jumping the shark in increasingly less feasible ways. I don't even understand how this movie got made. The first hour of the film showed some promise before deteriorating so badly in the remainder that it completely ruined the film, as it goes through a series of convoluted twists that, if you think about them, don't even work. It's currently sat on a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, and that for me is extremely generous. That would put it in the ballpark of the Schwarzenegger movies Red Heat and The Running Man, and better than Raw Deal or Action Jackson, and it isn't even close to being that good. If I was being generous, I'd maybe give it a 3 or 4 out of 10. As I write this, I've got a female friend going to watch this movie because she loves Henry Cavill, and when she gets back, she's going to be furious. I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen. Honestly, maybe just give this movie a miss, or wait until it goes to streaming. There are better ways of spending over 2 hours of your life. Go for a long walk, get some fresh air, or maybe just watch something like The Kingsman: The Secret Service or GoldenEye. They're in the same sort of genre and are far better movies. Watching Argylle left me angry and unsatisfied. From here on in, I get into spoilers, so if you don't want the film ruined, maybe tune out here, but in truth, the people that made Argylle already kind of ruined it. The film opens up with scenes from something like a really low-rent James Bond 007 knockoff, with Agent Argylle being played by Henry Cavill, meeting Dua Lipa's villain character for the first time and doing a dance move where he puts his face right into a penalty box.
Those look good. A big salty clam would sure go great with this heat.
And it's Dua Lipa, so I dread to think it could be like the Predator's face down there. She's a villain working for a group called The Division. Loads of people point weapons at Henry Cavill, he's then disarmed, but they're in a circle, so if they actually open fire, they'll just end up hitting their own men. One of Argyle's people, Kira, sets off the fire suppression system, and he gets out somehow. I have no idea how, it all happens off camera. As Argylle gets to Kira outside, Dua Lipa fires on them, hitting Kira in the chest, and what follows is a god-awful CGI chase sequence as Dua Lipa rides a motorbike down winding roads, and it looks like a PlayStation 2 cutscene. This right here is what the CGI in Argylle looks like. Nothing has any weight. Dua Lipa gets captured by Argylle and his partner, and Lipa reveals that they've all been working for the Division all along. I have no idea why an organisation would send their own agents to attack each other, and neither does the film seem to. But this scene is not real, we learn. This is instead the plot to a book written by a female American author, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, and dear lord has she got chunky since Jurassic World, to the extent that she struggles to move in multiple scenes in this film. Don't worry though, they just CGI it. They really badly CGI it, and all in all, she's less convincing to me as an action hero than Roger Moore as Bond when he was nearly 60. The author is the real lead of this film. She's written 5 books about this character, Agent Argylle, and how he's going back to deal with the Division. And while the author is on a train, the movie takes its first twist of many, after being hit on by multiple men who she rebuffs because she's married to her writing. A strange man sits with her and her cat, a man who reveals he is in fact a real spy, and the entire train carriage is filled with assassins sent to deal with her. Because it's claimed her novels are so accurate to the truth, it's endangered the real criminal organisation called the Division. And they take a plane to London after getting away from the train because the spy wants a secret file that will destroy the Division and claims he can only find it if Ellie carries on writing her story. And this is the good part of Argylle. It gets so much worse from here. The writer does some thinking about the story, and what she works out takes them to the house of a hacker who was going to give the file to the spy but never turned up, and they find a book under the floorboards when the spy decides to dance for no reason whatsoever and hears that the floorboards are loose. Nobody found that in 5 years. And there's another huge fight sequence when the Division sends men to the same place. Ellie hears the spy talking later after they get away about how he can't wait to execute Ellie Conway, which is her. So she runs off and calls her mum, who comes to London with her dad to collect her. Then we get the second twist of the story. When her dad arrives, it's Bryan Cranston, who's already been revealed in the story as the head of the Division. It turns out that neither Ellie's mum or dad are actually her parents, and when the spy turns up, they pull weapons. And we're told Ellie was actually Agent Argylle, who'd lost her memory and been brainwashed to be an author for the last 5 years, and she's been writing stories from her subconscious about her former life. The Division was hoping she would remember and write down where they could get the dossier that would ruin them. And they allowed this woman to write international bestsellers describing their clandestine organisation to the entire public to potentially find out where to get the evidence that would destroy them. They didn't just let her, they made her do this. It wasn't really the spy who'd asked for the dossier from the hacker, it was in fact the author in her former life, as we now know, Agent Argylle, or her real name, Agent Argylle of the CIA. We find out that every Henry Cavill scene we've seen in the movie was just Ellie's repressed memories. So when they did that scene of Henry Cavill at the start, lifting up Dua Lipa and putting his face into a muff, that was really Bryce Dallas Howard, was it? I'm not sure they've really thought this through.
Those look good. A big salty clam would sure go great with this heat. You want one, Daff?
No!
To me, that clip never gets old. Sam Rockwell rescues the writer from her fake mum and dad. For some reason, he leaves the writer's fake mum and dad alive, despite knowing that Bryan Cranston is the leader of the Division, and he could have done it easily. He doesn't for plot reasons. The film wants them for scenes later, and the writer was either too lazy or too incompetent to write an in-universe reason to leave them alive. Argylle is then taken to meet Samuel L. Jackson, the ex-head of the CIA, who was trying to take down the Division. Together they decode the hacker's book to find that the evidence that they need to take down the Division has been left with a woman called the Keeper. And it's the actress Sophia Boutella again, who I saw recently in Rebel Moon and maybe needs to fire her agent. There's yet another dance number, this time with the spy and Bryce Dallas Howard, and this time he lifts her up and puts his face in her bits, in a scene which probably wasn't the real Bryce Dallas Howard, because if Sam Rockwell tried to lift the real one, he'd probably do his effing back in. Then they embrace for a kiss, and an Arabic man steps in, telling them they don't allow public displays of affection. Putting your face in a woman's genitals is a-okay, but kissing is a bridge too far if you're in an Arabic country. The Keeper of Secrets then gives Ellie the file, revealing the identities of the members of the division, and now it's plot twist number 3, because on the list of members, Ellie finds herself, and none of that makes sense. If she was on the division side, why did they have to brainwash her? What did the division even do to make them the bad guys of this film? The film never bothers to show us, really. They do less bad stuff in this film than the real CIA own up to on a regular basis. Ellie's fake mum then shows up at the Keeper's place. They have tea with her for reasons, and she drugs them. When they wake up, they're all in the division's secret base, and they haven't got rid of Ellie for some reason, even though she was asleep. They sent assassins after her earlier, but they've now changed their minds. Ellie then pretends to be evil, even putting a round in Sam Rockwell's chest in order to prove her point, and then goes to the control room with her fake parents to show them where Samuel L. Jackson is, and instead, she tries to send the file to Samuel L. Jackson, but she's caught, and this leads to a finale that somehow managed to be worse than Kingsman 2: The Golden Circles. Ellie knocks out her fake parents, who are the only other people in the entire control room. There are no guards, and she leaves them both alive yet again, and then walks into the bad guy's completely undefended armoury. Then her partner also walks in, who just shook off that whole hole in his heart thing. But it's all okay. We learn that he's fine because Ellie put a bit of cloth in the gaping chest wound. They then take out half of the bad guy's security while dancing and making heart shapes with multicoloured gas, and then the other half when the room gets flooded with oil, so everyone has to use melee weapons or risk setting the room on fire. And Bryce Dallas Howard remembers that in a former life she used to be quite a good ice skater. She drives 2 knives into the soles of her boots and uses them as ice skates on the oily floor. As she skates around the room in bad CGI bayoneting the bad guys, I'm not convinced for a second any of this would work in the real world. I don't buy that the knives would stay in the boots. I don't buy that boots with knives pushed in would make serviceable ice skates. I don't buy that a woman who's been a writer for 5 years and doubled her body weight would still be in good enough shape to be a super spy, despite barely being able to run. If the oil was flammable, the knives would be sparking like crazy from grinding against the floor. She puts maybe 50 guys to sleep permanently in the ice skating scene alone. The bad guys all lose, and Sam Rockwell does these fight sequences seemingly unbothered by the hole clean through his chest. Apple spent a reported $200 million making this movie. Argylle was bloody awful.
Jesus. You know, I'm really wired. What do you say I take you home and eat your
Never rub another man's rhubarb.